Hey, deep divers, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. And hey, drop a comment down below too, because today we're diving deep into something that's got everyone talking,
Oh, yeah.
the 2024 election.
Huh.
But more specifically, we're focusing on black men and the potentially huge impact they could have.
I'm intrigued.
This all comes from an article by Killy Goff in the Daily Beast. And let me tell you, she doesn't hold back.
Oh, lay it on me then.
Goff basically says black men have already won this election. Like, they hold the key.
Won the election. That's a bold statement. So how does she back that up?
Well, she argues that black men could swing the entire outcome. It's all about their voting power.
Makes sense, but it's not like they're the only voting bloc out there. What makes them so special this time around?
She brings up a really interesting critique of the Democratic Party.
Okay, I'm listening.
Goff, who's a black woman herself, says Democrats take black voters for granted, especially black women.
I see. Like they assume those votes are guaranteed and don't need to put in any effort.
Exactly. She contrasts that with how both parties practically bend over backwards to persuade white swing voters.
Yeah, you see that all the time. It makes you wonder, is it smart to assume any group will vote a certain way?
And is it fair?
Exactly.
Plus, if we're talking history, black voters have mostly leaned Democrat. So there's that.
Right. But things change. What's Goff's take on all this?
Here's where it gets interesting. She's predicting that Trump will actually win a larger share of the black vote than any other Republican before him.
Whoa, now that's a curveball, and she thinks this will be especially true among black men.
That's what she says. It really shakes things up, doesn't it?
For sure. So what's behind this potential shift?
Well, Goff suggests that maybe black Americans are looking at Trump's presidency and realizing, despite all the controversy, it wasn't as bad as they feared.
Interesting. So the reality didn't necessarily match the rhetoric.
Exactly. She thinks maybe black voters are starting to prioritize their own economic situations above all else.
Meaning they might care more about policies that directly affect their wallets than, say, symbolism or representation.
It seems that way.
It makes you think, is this a short-term thing, or could this be a sign of a bigger change?
Right. It's something worth watching closely.
You know, Goff makes another point worth thinking about, the Kamala Factor.
Okay, I'm curious.
She compares the Obamas to Kamala Harris, and, obviously she's a capable politician.
Sure.
But Goff argues that she doesn't quite have that it factor.
You're talking about that charisma, that energy that both Barack and Michelle Obama had.
Exactly that.
Yeah, they did have this incredible ability to connect with people.
For sure. And Goff suggests that Harris, maybe because she's a woman and a minority, doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt.
It's like those flawed white male candidates we see.
Yeah, they seem to get away with things others can't.
It makes you think about how much personality really matters in these elections.
Right, like can good policies overcome a lack of personal appeal?
Do voters connect with the person or the platform?
It seems like a basic question, but it matters.
Totally. And Goff's point seems to be that maybe for some black voters, that personal connection isn't as important as it once was.
Maybe they're more focused on the policies themselves and how those policies will affect them personally.
It all comes back to that idea of individual choice, right?
Exactly. Goff sees this potential shift away from the Democratic Party as black men finding their own political voice.
Not just voting based on tradition or solidarity.
But making choices that are best for them as individuals.
So that really changes how we think about black political power, doesn't it?
It's a good question. Is it about voting as a unified bloc?
Or is it about empowering individuals to make their own choices?
Choices that reflect their own unique needs and beliefs?
These are complicated questions with huge implications.
Absolutely.
And if this trend keeps going, how will it change the way parties try to win over black voters in the future?
Right. If those old assumptions about voting blocs aren't true anymore,
Parties can't just take those votes for granted.
they'll have to work harder to understand and address the concerns of individual voters.
It's almost like a whole new ballgame in politics.
Yeah, maybe parties will have to move away from those broad appeals.
And start focusing on more targeted messages.
Messages that speak to the real concerns of individual voters.
It could lead to a much more dynamic and responsive political landscape.
Imagine that, parties actually listening to voters and adjusting their policies.
What a concept.
It really is.
So if this idea of individual choice really takes hold,
If black voters start making decisions based on their own needs and not just sticking with one party,
how will that change things for both Democrats and Republicans going forward?
Well, it means they can't just rely on old assumptions anymore.
They'll need to figure out new ways to connect with black voters.
Exactly. No more taking those votes for granted.
It will be interesting to see how they adapt their strategies
Yeah, they'll need to really understand what individual voters care about.
and tailor their messages and policies to those concerns.
It's a big shift.
And it could lead to some really interesting changes in the political landscape.
No doubt.
Well, Deep Divers, we've covered a lot of ground today,
We sure have.
exploring this idea of black voters choosing what's best for them as individuals.
And how that could change the future of American politics.
It all comes back to Killigoff's article, and I have to say, it's been a real eye-opener.
It definitely challenges some of those traditional assumptions about voting blocs.
It makes you think about the power of individual choice.
And how that power could reshape the political landscape.
So, Deep Divers, we want to hear from you now.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on all this?
Do you think individual choice is becoming more important in elections?
How do you think it will affect the way parties try to win over black voters in the future?
Drop a comment below and let us know.
And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the biggest issues of our time.
Thanks for joining us, Deep Divers. Until next time, keep diving deeper.